Hello and welcome to White Rose Resistance Radio. Today we're going to be talking about the Luddites. It's taken me quite a while to get this video out due to a number of things going on in my personal life and the fact that it really took a lot of research to get this done. Um, I found out a lot of things that I didn't know, and so I hope you will enjoy learning some things about the Luddites. The poor cry aloud for bread, Prince Regent shall lose his head, and all the rich who oppose the poor in a little time shall be no more. With deep regret I write these things, they'll come to pass in spite of kings. A poem that was in the Flintshire letter on the 5th of May, 1812. I got this out of a book called The Writings of the Luddites, um, published in 2015. The Luddites wrote a lot of poetry and songs uh, as a protest, and we'll get into that in the next slide. So, who were the Luddites, or what does Luddite mean? A lot of people use the word now in a somewhat different context than its original meaning. Merriam-Webster says it's one of a group of early 19th century English workmen destroying labor-saving machinery as a protest. The destroying machinery thing we'll get into here in a little bit because it didn't happen quite as often as was kind of dramatized. In modern parlance, it's more broadly one who is opposed especially to technological change. The Luddites argued that automation destroys jobs. My late ex-father-in-law uh, would refer to himself as a Luddite because he refused to learn how to use a computer and took early retirement instead. Um, so he didn't smash or destroy anything. Luddite has just come to generally mean somebody who is opposed to new technologies or technology in general. But the original Luddites had legitimate grievances, which we're going to cover next. All right, we're going to give a little context here. Uh, the Luddites, the Luddite movement itself was around 1811 to 1812. There had been a lot of other labor movements before that opposed to industrialization. Um, and at this point it was, water mills that were powering equipment to mostly in the textile industry. Steam power would come around soon and then make things even bigger. So in Lancashire, new cotton spinning technologies had met with violent resistance in 1768 and 1779, and weavers battled over wages and it led to widespread violence in 1808. So here we are, it's the textile industry primarily. Um, Importation of cotton from the British colonies was cheapening the price of fabrics because England had primarily built its textile industry on wool, and in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance period had been a wool manufacturing country. Um, so these introductions of both new technologies to produce more fabric and the introduction of cheaper fabrics was seriously impacting people who worked in this industry when it was done mostly by skilled craftsmen. Um, there had been some protest by weavers in France as well, and there would be going on. Earlier agitators had rarely given themselves a title and were just generically labeled by the authorities as depredators or the disaffected or just the mob. Um, but the people who broke machines in 1811, 1812 were referred to almost from the start as Luddites, which is a name they gave themselves. The introduction of mechanization of previously artisan trades was leading to widespread cultural and economic changes, as you can imagine. Well-paid artisans are being replaced by low-wage factory workers who are largely women and children because the factories could pay them even less. And what you have is skilled trades being phased out in favor of mass-produced goods. So pre this industrialization, the textile industry in most of Europe was controlled by guilds of workers, the weavers, the fullers, the all the different types of trades. Um, so, like to become one of these skilled trades, to become a weaver, for example, you needed to apprentice to a master for a period of time, and you work your way up from apprentice to a journeyman to a master, and it took a long time, and you usually were apprenticed when you were still a child. So imagine that you were apprenticed to a master when you were like 12, and you worked for him and you learned the trade for most of your teens. You became a journeyman sometime in your 20s, you worked your way up to being a master weaver, only to have a factory come and be built in your town and replaced you with the unskilled labor for the profit of some factory owner who never touched a loom. You know, their interest is purely for profit. They're not interested in the artisanship of producing cloth. So it's really understandable the rage that a lot of these workers were feeling about their lost livelihoods. In the late 18th century, prosperous weavers could pull in 30 shillings, which is about £1.50 a week. And by 1802, the average was still around 21 shillings a week. But the wage for the average textile mill worker varied depending on age and gender. An adult male could earn 15 to 20 shillings a week, and an adult woman could earn 7 shillings a week, and a child could earn roughly 3 shillings a week. And so you can see the factories didn't employ a lot of men. Um, they employed a lot of women and children mostly because they were very cheap to employ. And so you're losing well-paid, skilled jobs that husbands and fathers had done, and you're getting your children hired to do this extremely dangerous work for very little money. And this is a huge contributor to poverty at the time. So children as young as 6 worked as piecers, leaning over fast machines to tie broken threads, or scavengers, crawling under machinery to sweep the dust. And they did this kind of really dangerous work for 3 shillings a week. They liked children because they were small and could fit into spaces that adults, even adult women, could not fit. So this is the context. We're taking away somebody's 30 shillings a week and replacing it with, maybe they put 2 or 3 of their children to work and they're getting, say, 9 shillings a week. And then the adults have to find some other line of work to go into. And if you've spent your whole life training to be a weaver or a dyer or whatever it is, now dyers is this whole other sort of thing. They were generally kind of pariahs because dyeing is a very stinky business. But it's a huge change economically for people involved in the textile trades. So the Luddites are remembered for smashing the textile industry machines, which is the thing we saw in the definition at the beginning. Um, but that didn't really happen all that often. Mostly what they did was they wrote letters, some of them quite threatening, to mill owners and government officials. A lot of the letters contained poetry and songs. They were called Luddites because their mythical leader, Ned Ludd, who was not a real person. It was Ned Ludd was a useful alias. So working class people could avoid persecution by the government and the factory owners because the letter signed Ned Ludd, and they can't prove who wrote it. And it's kind of like the anonymous thing in the 2000s. And yeah, it's protest. The violence of it was exaggerated a bit in the papers at the time and by the mill owners because they were trying to get the government to crack down on these people, because they were disrupting their business. So the main question is, were they right? Broadly, yes. The Luddites were right. The Industrial Revolution took away many skilled craft jobs and replaced them with low paid factory jobs. This would increase poverty, especially during the later Victorian era when mass production became far more widespread and it spread to other industries. Mass produced goods would also enable working class people to own more material goods. Um, the cheap goods made things more affordable. I mean, cotton dresses and uh, pre-made things, because later there would be um, factory-made clothing, off-the-rack type clothing, which was not a thing before this. We can debate for whether owning a lot of cheaply made junk is better than owning a very few well-made items. Um, but I think the huge shift from skilled to unskilled labor um, caused not just an economic upheaval, but a social one as well, because it changed the relationship. Every town and village had a weaver and a tailor, and now we have shops, and we are the consumers of goods and not really the producers of goods. The kinds of jobs people do has shifted because automation has replaced a lot of skilled work. And yes, factories employ people, but not in the same way that traditional crafts had employed people. So, comparisons to the modern day. Do you think the widespread dislike of AI is similar to Luddism? Um, AI is very likely to replace some skilled and unskilled work and displace a lot of workers. And, you have people like Elon Musk talking about all work will be done by AI and everybody will be unemployed, which is crazy and not likely. Um, AI is a tool like other tools. It will be good at some things and not good at others. And this is just my opinion, of course, but there's lots of revolutionary technologies over the years that they said were going to give us 3-day work weeks and all kinds of amazing benefits that have not fulfilled that promise very well. A lot of these new technologies benefit the wealthy who own them and not ordinary people. Yeah, there are benefits for ordinary people too, but there's been a lot of technological changes over the last 150, 200 years that have mostly benefited the wealthy. Um, and changes in technology often create economic changes that can take a generation or more to recover from, like when we switched from whale oil lighting and heating to petroleum products like kerosene. Um, that was a huge thing. I mean, yes, the whalers had hunted whales nearly to extinction, which was a push for change. Um, but then you had all of these whalers who were out of work and they couldn't work in the new industry. It was a completely foreign thing to them. Coal has been in decline because coal is expensive, the mining is dangerous, the work is makes a lot of the people employed in it ill, um, and we're moving on to cleaner energy sources now for the benefit of everyone because nobody wants to deal with the pollution caused by coal. Well, except for certain people in the current administration, but that's another story. These changes put some people out of work and create jobs in different sectors. And while they create jobs, often the people who are put out of work are unable to switch industries. Um, the shock of more of our modern changes is the fact that people are still training to be in the affected industries right up until the time the new technology makes them obsolete. In the early to mid 90s, I was going to school for drafting, and we were still drafting on tables with pencils and learning how to do line weights and lettering and all of those things that were already obsolete because everybody was going to computer-aided drafting. And you still have to know drafting standards, but it's a lot less involved with creating proper line weights with pencils. Although hand-drawn drawings are very attractive, but almost nobody does them anymore. Um, does technological advancement outweigh human suffering? Can technology advance without throwing millions of people out of work? And is the benefit of the new technology worth the cost? We can talk about all this in the comments if you like. Um, I think these are very important um, points and things that should be talked about. I mean, technology is going to advance, um, but we need to think about the implementation, and we need to, as a society, plan for what happens to the people who are displaced by these changes. They need to be given some assistance in getting into a different line of work. We need a safety net so that we don't throw the economy into chaos for everybody. This slide shows some of the sources I used. I mentioned the book, um, The Writings of the Luddites, which was really informative. It's really interesting to read what they wrote. It is available on Kindle from Amazon, but I'm sure you can probably find it in your local library. I'd be really interested to know what everyone thinks about the questions I ask in the comments, if anyone cares to comment. If you feel like you learned something today or you found this interesting, please like and subscribe. Um, I have 37 subscribers right now, and I would love to have more. Um, so I hope you found this interesting, and I will see you all in a week or two. Thank you very much. Have a really great rest of your day.